call the commission meeting to order. Commissioners note that mics are on all the time. You have something derogative to say?
Hit the mute button first.
Okay, we're open for business. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Burke. Here. Commissioner Dunn.
Here.
Commissioner Arp. Commissioner Gilmetti. Present. Commissioner Guardino. Present. Commissioner Inman. Here. Commissioner Kehoe.
Here.
Commissioner von Koneinenberg.
Here.
Commissioner Medaffer.
Here.
Commissioner Tavaloni.
Here.
Chair Alvarado.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Item 2, welcome to the region. Rosa? Good morning.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for being here, but Bill Zalaki will open up the meeting.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Stanislaus County and the city of Modesto. And I can honestly say that I have never seen such a beautiful group sitting at our lectern, especially the glowing right side for you, left side for me. Well, all of you, but especially the new member, our own Valley Commissioner Paul Van Koneinenberg. We just really excited about that. So my name is Bill Zalaki. I'm council member with the city of Modesto and chair of Stanislaus Council of Governments. Thank you for coming here and to our great region tonight. You may be happy to hear, if you haven't already heard many times, that we are now a self-help county because we passed Measure L this last November with 71.9%. Huge, huge, huge numbers for us here in the Valley. And with that, then right behind it, we got a twofer, and that's SB1 passing. And we're excited about the opportunities that are coming with SB1, the future improvements that we can compete for fairly and improve our quality of roads that are just dearly underbuilt, or whatever you want to say. With that, if you haven't noticed, as you drove in, Modesto is rich in arts and entertainment, evidenced especially by Modesto's own George Lucas, the creator of American Graffiti, the creator of the Star Wars trilogies. So keeping with that in mind, and the brevity of your meeting with your long agenda, we have a little video that tells you a little bit about what's going on, and the theme for us, on time, under budget. If we could have that video run.
Nice theme.
You may have to turn around, sometimes it's better behind that. Modesto, Stanislaus County, it's just beginning. Thank you.
Wow.
So,
okay, now how are you going to top that?
I know, how am I going to? Now I have to talk to you really about how SB1 and our measure is going to work together for our region. And we're very excited. First of all, we're very excited that you're here, so thank you. Welcome to Stanislaus County. I wanted to just highlight that active transportation program, one of our cities, City of Patterson, will be submitting, obviously, for your vote today, an approval of the City of Patterson 9th Street Improvement Project, over $900,000 for that project. That would be, it's a project that is near high school, and it will make significant improvements for the students living in the area, for the students going to school and the residents actually living in the area. So we're pretty excited over this. And then secondly, it's local partnership program. We're super excited that we could actually apply for this program. We've had a project here in our county in the city of Turlock, an interchange project that has been shovel ready, and with this opportunity with the local partnership program, it would really help us get this project moving quicker. And so we're very excited over that. With our Measure L and the local funds that the city have already committed, we can make this happen. So the other item that I wanted to bring to your attention also is the local planning grants. There's so many opportunities with the passage of SB1 and the Measure L. We are really working together with our member agencies to make sure that we apply and come forward with many projects that we have in our pipeline that we've not been able to deliver, but we're going to get ready to do that. So with that, I just wanted to thank you and let you know that we are committed to work with you all together. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Thank you, Rosa. Okay, with that, approval of the minutes for August 16th and 17th.
Move it.
Motion by Tavaloni, second by Dunn. Questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Commissioners' meeting for compensation. Motion by Gilmetti, second by Tavaloni. Questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Executive Director.
Great. Commissioners, I wanted to start out by welcoming Commissioner Van Konynenberg to the Commission for his first meeting. And I also wanted to take this opportunity to just really highlight what you're going to hear today on today's agenda, and also to give you, and Mitch will be covering this in more detail, but just to share with you the accomplishments to date in implementing Senate Bill 1. The Commission so far has adopted guidelines for the Local Streets and Roads program, the Active Transportation program, the SHOP program, the Asset Management Plan, and the State Transportation Improvement Program. At the meeting today, the Commission will be asked to adopt guidelines for the Local Partnership Program and the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program. The Commission will also be asked to adopt the statewide Small Urban and Rural Program for the Active Transportation Program today. There's one last program under the Commission's purview, the Congested Corridors Program, that you will be hearing, that you will be receiving an update on that, the guidelines for that program, with the expectation that those program guidelines would be adopted in December. The Commission will also be considering an item today to request that Caltrans bring in benchmarks for measuring performance of the State Highway Operation and Protection Program. We would be asking the Commission to approve those benchmarks in December as a measures that we can use for assessing the effectiveness at which the investments are achieving the targets set out in Senate Bill 1. Commission staff is also working on accountability guidelines for ensuring that the promises that are made at the time of programming are kept, and our intention is to bring those guidelines forward to you all for consideration and adopting in December. So we also have an interregional transportation improvement program hearing tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Having said all that, that is a lot of work that has been accomplished since this bill was enacted in late April. And it's astounding, really, that the work that has been done by the Commission staff as well as our stakeholders. And I wanted to use this as an opportunity to again thank all the state agencies, the Air Resources Board, Caltrans, the Transportation Agency, all the regional agencies, local agencies, CSAC, the League, and the advocacy groups and others that have helped us to date. We cannot accomplish what we're doing and what we've accomplished so far and what we need to accomplish moving forward without everybody's help. And I also just really want to recognize our staff. We have a tremendous staff, and I'm truly grateful. And I just want to thank them for everything that they've done to date and that they're embarking on over the next few months. Having said that, we have a very small staff, as you all know. We were authorized 6 new positions in the governor's budget. We have not yet fulfilled or filled all those positions, but we have had some staffing changes that I wanted to make you aware of, make everyone that works with the Commission aware of. We have brought in Juan Guzman, a former Commission employee, to assist us, and we have a student assistant, Megan Pedroncelli. Caltrans has loaned us some staff. We have Rick Estrada helping us with public informations. We have Casey Handren, who is no longer with us. She was with us, and we continue to have Reza Alfami to help us with our engineering type duties. We've made several promotions. We have promoted Mitch Weiss to serve as the Chief Deputy Director of the Commission. Yes. I won't bore you with his background. I think you all know his background. It serves him well. And oh, you want to hear it?
No. He wants to hear it.
I'm pleased to announce that appointment. And I'm also pleased to let you all know that we have promoted both Dawn Chester and Teresa Favila to Associate Deputy Directors. And as you know, they've been instrumental in carrying out various program guidelines. All right, and it's bittersweet to announce today, really want to congratulate Eric Thronson. Commission Deputy Director has recently accepted the appointment as the Chief Consultant for the Assembly Transportation Committee. And for that, very happy for him. We are truly grateful for everything that Eric has done for the Commission in his years with us. And he's really established a framework for our legislative platform that we will continue to build upon. But he set us in motion and made tremendous changes during his time at the Commission. And we are going to request a partner badge so that he has immediate access to the Commission staff, because we intend to continue to work with Eric on a regular basis. So congratulations, Eric. So having said that, want to let everyone know that we will be recruiting for the positions that were vacated with the promotions across the board in our office. And I also wanted to thank Director Doherty for the assistance that he has provided us at the Commission by loaning us staff members. Also want to truly thank you for your IT assistance. You have a wonderful IT department. They have helped us. You will all be seeing a new website that the Commission will have shortly. We have new email addresses. Our old email addresses will continue to work, but we have a new email string that is specific to the CTC. We also have had Caltrans IT assistants and continuing to help us with forms for making it easier for you all to submit project applications. And so I just thank you, and also Director Doherty and his staff is helping us to accommodate the new hires that that we are going to have. And also want to thank Undersecretary Annis in that regard, as well as the agency secretary. And you will hear from Caltrans Director that they've accelerated billions in projects that are made possible with Senate Bill 1, truly a success story. And since our last commission meeting, we did hold co-held a Mono County Town Hall. Mono County Local Transportation Commission hosted the commission on September 13th and 14th. We had Commissioners Alvarado, Inman, Van Konynenberg, Gilmetti, and Burke all attending. And I would like to thank, on behalf of the Commission, the Mono County and its partners for this town hall. And I have asked Lori to provide a brief overview of the key highlights of that town hall for those of you that were unable to be there.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. So as Susan mentioned, on September 13th and 14th, the Mono County Local Transportation Commission hosted a town hall meeting in the city of Mammoth Lakes. The theme of the town hall was partnerships in the Eastern Sierra. On September 13th, there was a series of presentations, including an overview of the Eastern Sierras, presentations on local capital projects of significance, and on local planning initiatives, an overview of regional transit in the Eastern Sierras, and an overview of state highway projects in the region. Some of the important issues brought out in these presentations included how much the Eastern Sierra economy is driven by tourism. For example, the town of Mammoth Lakes has a permanent population of only 3,000 people, but that grows to about 32,000 each weekend. State highways that move all these people are critical to the Eastern Sierra's economic livelihood. The theme of partnerships was emphasized in all the presentations. Rural agencies must work together to pool their limited resources in everything from building their transportation projects to providing state-of-the-art GIS and technical services. This staff person particularly appreciated learning about the challenges faced by rural areas in funding their active transportation projects and having the opportunity to speak in depth to local staff about what improvements could be made. The Mono County Local Transportation Commission did an excellent job in putting together an extremely informative and interesting town hall.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioners, I have 2 action items, and then I have 2 additional announcements. Commissioners, in your handouts is a 2018 calendar update, meeting calendar for 2018. This calendar was updated to reflect the statutorily required Stip and Shop hearings. Commission staff would seek your approval of this updated calendar.
Move approval.
Motion to made by Gilmetti. The second was Tavaloni. Question? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Commissioners, staff has previously provided you with an annual report and a short handout that sets forth the Commission's 2018 annual report to the legislature, including 2018 legislative recommendations, and staff would recommend your approval of this report in the handout.
Motion by Kehoe, second by Tavaloni. Questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Okay. 2 more items. I would want to make an announcement that Laura Pennybaker, Commission staff member, did have a baby, a little baby boy named Emmett, and she will be returning to the Commission here shortly. We're counting the days. So, and then lastly, in December, I understand that Janet Dawson with the Assembly Transportation Committee will be at our meeting, so we're looking forward to seeing her there and celebrating a little bit on her retirement. She thankfully is still here with us until that time, but just wanted to make sure you're all aware that is the Eric is taking her position. But Janet, we're truly grateful for everything that you have done for this commission and for the state of California. And Commissioners, that concludes my report.
Thank you. I'd also like to thank Janet. It's really kind of hard to be the only adult in the room about 80% of the time. Commissioner reports. Seeing none.
I'll make a quick comment, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind. Congratulations to a fellow commissioner on Mobility 21 down in Anaheim. It was a very productive, informative, interesting day. I was glad I had a chance to attend.
Thank you. Ryan.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Wanted to start by recognizing the hardship that many Californians, of course, are going through with the fires that continue around the state, and certainly our thoughts are with them. There's really 3 departments in the transportation agency that are heavily involved in this effort, and of course Caltrans is one of the largest. And it seems like time and time again, whether it's floods, fires, all sorts of issues, when times are the darkest, Caltrans employees shine the brightest and really do amazing things. And here with the fires, of course, they're out getting roads reopened. Also, we've had a lot of compliments through the emergency efforts with Caltrans communication staff. They're keeping the public updated through the Quick Maps application on the Caltrans website, and other communication links have been very, very well received. Of course, our highway patrol is both on the land and in the air. Their helicopter pilots, of course, rescued several people from the fires. And they're at the different roadblocks, both keeping people safe, and then when people do need access for different emergencies, providing that access where needed. Lastly, the DMV has an important role for the fire victims, because many times they lose their driver license and identity, vehicle titles, and DMV set up special offices and outreach in some of those areas to quickly restore those identity documents so people can start restoring their normal activities. I want to certainly add on to many of the things that were said about some of the staffing changes. I want to maybe especially the new commissioner, Van Konijnenburg, welcome. Glad to have you here. I've also worked with Janet, I think, just about as long as I've been around with the state, so it's a thrill. And I congratulate you, Janet, and you've done so many big things over the years, so congratulations. So on to SB1. That's certainly a huge topic, and there's so much going on with that. I just wanted to touch on a few things. I think Malcolm will probably have a few others. Through this meeting today, we're very much starting to translate from programs to projects, and that's very exciting. I understand over $5 billion may be programmed after today, with certainly city and county projects on the way. I know there's hope perhaps by the end of the month or so, some of those that have been submitted already will be able to highlight those as make the public aware of what's on the way in their local communities. Guidelines, of course, as Susan said, really want to add on my compliments to CTC staff. People don't realize how many meetings you have and how many places you go, and it's really amazing. And I think people are just surprised to hear 12, 15, the meetings just go on, but that outreach is extensive and I know appreciated. There's a couple programs where the guidelines are adopted by the Transportation Agency, and recently we put out final guidelines for some of the transit programs. We have the Transit Intercity Rail Capital Program. Those guidelines were posted on Friday. With SB1 and with the extension of the Cap and Trade program, we're happy to say that this upcoming 5-year program has an estimated $2.4 billion to invest in rail and transit projects. So that's just a huge amount of money, and we're just so happy to be able to move forward with that program. There's also a new program called State Rail Assistance, which is capital and operating money, somewhat similar to this state transit assistance that the state's had for a number of years. This will provide annual predictable amounts to the 5 commuter rail agencies in the state and the 3 intercity rail operators. So guidelines for that program were also released on Friday. There's several draft reports that recently have come out. I think the commission will receive some initial presentations on those, and then we'll be back in December to receive comments on the drafts. The state rail plan is certainly a different approach, I think a very robust approach to looking at rail as really a system, a unified system of public transportation that more and more shows opportunities with technology to make this seamless and really create this network of rail and transit that works. And people want to ride because it's faster and cheaper and more convenient. And secondarily on the reports, Caltrans is going to talk about the state, the highway asset management plan. And that's, I think, very significant, too, for thinking about some of the new opportunities with SB1. One statistic in there that caught my eye was this highway system we have in the state, both the state highways and the local roads that are part of the national highway system, has a value of almost $250 billion, almost $250 billion. And when you think about that investment of prior generations, how can we not do our part to preserve that with maintenance? And it just, of course, irresponsible not to, because of that huge investment and that huge asset we've built over the decades. Lastly, at the last commission meeting, there was a request for us to talk a bit more about the Inspector General position, which was created by SB1. Of course, that's a position that individual would serve a 6-year term, confirmable by the Senate, and a person cannot be removed except for cause. So the governor's appointments office has been working hard to identify a highly qualified individual, and It's possible during the commission meeting today or tomorrow, there could be an announcement on that. So I will hold off on saying more, but it's possible I might be able to provide an update a little later. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Brian. If you would also share with the Secretary, commend his editorials column in the Sacramento Bee today. For those of you that haven't seen it, it is suitable for tweeting and Facebooking and framing. I thought he did a terrific job, and please give him our congratulations.
Good question. Malcolm.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioners, a few things that I'd like to update you on. There's a lot of activities, and I'll try to just hit some of the highlights. First, let me offer my welcome to Commissioner Van Konynenberg. Had an opportunity to spend a little bit of time with him last week, and I'll comment on that event in just a moment. But it's good to fill that seat and have that representation from the San Joaquin Valley. Also, my congratulations to Mitch. I think I know enough about Mitch's background that we don't want to go over it here today. It's kind of a family show. Also, you may know that my Chief Deputy Kome Ajize has moved on to his next challenge in his professional career at SCAG. I have asked Lori Berman, our District 11 Director, to come in and fill in. Lori is here somewhere. Where's Lori? Where'd she go?
She is standing.
Oh, okay. But Lori will be filling in for an undisclosed amount of time, but we'll be working on trying to fill that position. But I greatly appreciate her assisting us and taking on that additional responsibility. In the meantime, Corey Binns will be acting as the District 11 District Director, who is also a well-respected individual down in District 11. So I'd like to add just a few more specifics without getting into too much time on the devastating fires. We participate in two-a-day calls, briefings with the Governor's Office and the Office of Emergency Services and the Unified Command Center. Some numbers on the devastating fires between Northern and Southern California. Over 212,000 acres have been burned. It's estimated that 6,900 structures have been destroyed. Now, not all of those are homes, but a majority of those are homes and businesses. And as of this morning, there were 42 persons reported as deceased due to those devastating fires. There are still a lot of individuals that are missing, and we'll be updating those numbers. We are very much into recovery mode. About this past weekend is when CAL FIRE and many other agencies, including from other states and other countries, were able to get the other hand and turn the corner. The major fires in Northern California are at 76%, 65%, and 83% contained. As of about Friday night, those numbers were probably somewhere between 5 and 10%, so they are getting the upper hand. There is a new fire in Santa Cruz County, the Bear Creek fire, that is only at 10% containment, that a lot of people are expending a lot of resources and efforts. And our hats off to all the first responders, not only the law enforcement, but the firefighters, local and CAL FIRE, doing everything they possibly can. Our activities really are in repairing some of the damage, and that damage will include repairing a guardrail, signs, culverts, doing some restriping. We still, at this point, have 5 signals that have been repaired. Everything's in order, but they don't have electricity going to them. And one of the biggest efforts is removing damaged trees such that they are not hazards when those roads reopen. The routes in Northern California that are impacted still to this day are 121 in Napa, 128 in Napa, Route 12 and Route 29. Many portions of those routes are reopening as we speak. The longest route that will require repairs is actually State Route 12, south of Santa Rosa, which has a significant amount of guardrail which needs to be repaired, and we'll have those repairs done by Saturday. We've done several different director's orders to assist us. We do not have a constraint with resources. We are bringing resources in from around the state, and if we don't have the resources, we'll hire contractors. To this date, we have 3 director's orders totaling about $13.6 million because this work is quick. We probably will have a few more director's orders, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not a huge financial hit to be able to do those repairs. We're trying to stay ahead of any planned opening so that folks can return to their homes. We do have 7 employees who have lost their homes in the fire. We have many others that were evacuated that may not know at this time. whether or not their homes have been damaged. And we also have one employee whose parent was deceased in the fire. So we certainly are looking at the impacts of those fires, devastating fires, to our own Caltrans family as well. But I thought that I would share that update with you. And again, I think the state's efforts right now are focusing in on recovery and what to do from shelters to temporary housing to permanent housing and restoring some of those businesses. And all the entities on the state are on deck when we're on those calls twice a day to talk about that recovery. Just a couple of good news stories on some of the transportation projects. I mentioned the opportunity to spend some time with Mr. Van Konynenberg last week. We were at a groundbreaking event for 180 Expressway east of Fresno. That is the fourth of 4 segments. That's the last segment. That entire route has been able to be improved by a combination of local sales tax measures and STIP dollars, as well as some competitive grants along the way. And this was the last project jointly funded by local sales tax measure C in Fresno County and STIP dollars. So that was a very well attended event, and then we had time to have lunch with Fresno County Transportation Authority and Fresno COG after that. The next day, on Friday, we reopened Pfeiffer Canyon Bridge in Big Sur on State Route 1. That was certainly one of the significant impacts that we had along the Pacific Coast Highway back in February. I could not have been prouder of the Caltrans team and the work that they did. They did the design in days, not months. The steel was ordered before the design was even done, and we had locations lined up to do fabrication. I couldn't have been happier with the partnership that we had with the contractor as well, Golden State Bridge. I do not think that that bridge could have been reconstructed in any less time. I was also very happy and encouraged by the participation with the local community, which came out and was very thankful that we got the bridge and was very amenable during the delays while that bridge was closed. But I don't know that we could have replaced that bridge with a single-span steel structure from a 3-span concrete structure in any quicker time. Tim Gubbins will be have an opportunity to talk about some of the methods we used to accelerate that, as well as the innovative steps that we took to be able to repair that bridge in your agenda item later this morning. And then on Saturday, this is just last week, by the way, all of these different activities. On Saturday, we imploded 3 more piers, marine foundations in the Bay Bridge simultaneously. That's the first time we've imploded 3 at a time. That means we've now done 8 out of 13. We have 5 left in 2 more weekends. So the middle of November, we will be done with the implosions of the marine foundations in the bay from the old east span. That will be the remainder of that work. That work was originally scheduled to be completed next October, next November. So we'll be done with that work a year ahead, and it is all going as planned. So we have 2 more weekends of that activity. You do have an action item today to amend 90 projects with a total cost, the total value of those projects being $3.4 billion into the 2016 SHOP. This adds on to earlier actions you have taken to add jobs into our portfolio because of SB1. It also combines with some of the major maintenance accelerations as well as our accelerated bridge program, and I do want to go over that in just a second. But we are off and running with SB1, putting these dollars to work as quickly as we possibly can. And there is over $5 billion worth of work moving forward already, even though the revenue doesn't start until November 1st for that program. So we are off and running. You will also get presented to you today the Transportation Asset Management Plan for your review and comment at your CTC meeting in December. There's been a significant amount of work and the culmination of outreach to put this plan together, and I want to thank Michael B. Johnson for all of his work in putting that together. I think it is one of the most robust asset management plans in the country, and I think over the last couple of years we have come a long ways in how we prepare our asset management plan. So we present that to you today for your comment back in December. Very quickly, I wanted to show you some of the aspects of our accelerated bridge program that we are putting forward, and the last of the projects are on your agenda today to be supplemented into the program. But again, what we did is we took corridors that had heavy goods movement and freight components to it, and then overlaid that with the bridge needs that we had in that area so that we could clear long stretches of major corridors all at once. To improve efficiency of that freight movement, reduce time and delay for the freight industry, eliminate detour routes, and improve traffic flow. Some of those corridors beginning with I-5 corridor in Los Angeles County and Kern County. You see here a list of a dozen bridges that will be either addressing vertical clearance or some of the load-bearing forces of those bridges, and that will address all of the needs along that stretch of highway between those two counties. These are just some of the bridges that will be addressed on that corridor. There are several bridges, a handful of bridges on I-5 corridor in the San Joaquin County region. I will note here, a lot of these bridges will be delivered very expeditiously, but there are some big investments, such as the Stockton Channel Viaduct, which is on this list. That will be a longer-term endeavor, but we will move forward with these projects in part and accelerate all of these needs. These are some. This is the Stockton Channel Viaduct bridge here. The I-80 corridor. There's a dozen projects, a dozen bridges on the I-80 corridor from the MacArthur Maze heading east towards the Sacramento direction that we will be delivering these projects. You'll note in the corner some of these will be done by design bid build. Some of these corridors will be done by CMGC, whatever is the most appropriate and efficient way to deliver these improvements as quick as possible. We will be lumping many of these projects together where we can. You can see the MacArthur Maze here, as well as some of the other bridges that will be improved in this corridor. And then I-5 in Northern California, there's a half a dozen projects in Northern California in the Redding area and in the Sacramento area that will be doing improvements to address those needs. These are some of those bridges. And then the I-5s, here's the Sacramento, Yolo, Colusa corridor, and there's a handful of bridges, 9 bridges there too. And then down south, lastly, the 60 and 10 corridor, we have several different projects. Even though they're on 2 different routes, they are definitely one trade corridor, and you can see the list of projects here on the 60 and the 10, and a couple of more projects a little farther east on the 10 corridor, and then here are some of those bridges here. The whole idea of this was to accelerate some of the project delivery, using accelerated project delivery needs to address some of the deficiencies and bottlenecks for freight movement. We will be using alternative delivery methods to accelerate that work. It will reduce those bottlenecks. In total, there are 6 corridors which we will address all of the needs, and it'll cover 460 miles on those corridors. 60 bridges overall, and the initial projects will be going out in the beginning of the fall. So again, we're happy to move forward with this in a very accelerated fashion and aggressive fashion to address needs. And when we're done with this set of projects, we will come back with another slate. I just wanted to try to very quickly share with you what we had intended with our accelerated bridge program. The last of these bridges will be augmented into our program portfolio of projects today, and then we will be off and running in trying to deliver those, at least the initial phases. So with that, I took a little bit more time than I intended, but I appreciate your attention and would be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions? Thank you. Mr. Mamano.
And while Vince is walking up, you might all want to say, "Go Eagles."
How about those Niners, though? For everybody else. He's an Eagles fan, but how about those Niners? I'm a Redskin fan, so we tried to lose it last week, but we did everything we could. Little guy, mustache, kind of bald. All the way bald.
The feds are here to help.
Yeah, right. By the way, I don't like where the camera is. I was looking at it the other day, and my son walked by and goes, did you polish that, Dad? What's going on?
Say, it's not so much the camera, it's the lights.
It's the lighting. Thank you. I wasn't sure. Happy New Year. So this is New Year to us. The federal fiscal year started in October. Wanted to cover just a few things. Paul Trombino has been nominated. He previous Iowa Director of Transportation. They're going through the confirmation process right now. And Brandy Hendrickson, I think I mentioned her name last time, previous to the Indiana Department of Transportation, is the acting administrator for the Federal Highway. She's currently the deputy administrator for the Federal Highway Administration. So they're going through that process. So we'll see how that all plays out. Last year, just from a magnitude standpoint, $3.8 billion were authorized, federal dollars were authorized, over 4,200 project authorizations and modifications. So there were 4,200 different actions on projects in the state of California, just federal projects. So I'm not even talking about the whole program, I'm just talking about the federal aid program. So that's a lot of effort that goes into the coordination in Norma's shop and Coco's shop with the local programs, and just a lot of work and effort that goes into it, a lot of coordination that goes into it. Last year, at the end of the year, we had $274 million in August redistribution dollars. So that's money that's in different programs that other states and California also weren't able to spend, and they put it back in the pot and they send it back out. So $274 million came to California in August. And I always like every year to give you a little perspective of that. There were, I think that's more than 9 states get the whole year. So 9 states' entire federal aid program is less than what California gets in August. And that's a testament, I think, like I try and say every year, your ability to deliver projects. So within that month of August, you were able to knock out, get all that stuff authorized and obligated. And a lot of work and planning goes into that. So I appreciate that effort that goes into that. You build $4.2 billion. So those are active projects that are billing and come as fed. It's a reimbursable program. So, we authorize the money, you spend it, your own money, and then we pay you back because it's better to do it that way than giving you the money early. We don't want to do that. All right? It's not that we don't trust you. It's just that we don't trust you. Don't read into that. All right? And then the other thing I wanted to talk a little bit about was inactive obligation. So there's a lot of people in this room that did a lot of effort to go to inactive obligation. Several years ago, there was a material weakness found in the federal aid program, and it was money that's just sitting on the books that's not being spent. Project's been authorized, hasn't been billed in over a year. There was a lot of effort and a lot of push that went. Malcolm, it was all the way from Malcolm, his district directors, everybody in headquarters, a lot of people that put a lot of effort into getting. A lot of locals were getting calls from Caltrans directors and the like. And we went from, in July at 6.4%, $485 million of unexpended balance. There's $485 million just sitting on books not being spent. To the end of September, just $93 million. So you went from 485 down to 93, down to 2.47. The overall national goal is a 2% goal, and 2.7 or 2.47 moves that national number. So there's some states that have very little money, we talked about earlier, that don't have that issue. But there's a lot of challenge that goes into it, and a lot of effort went into that. So I want to thank Caltrans and the locals for putting an effort into that, to making sure that doesn't stay a material weakness. I want to also put a plug in for, Malcolm mentioned it earlier, the Transportation Asset Management Plan. I think Mike Johnson's going to talk about that a little bit later. Our office has been coordinated with that. So, Michael, I appreciate you coordinating with our office and been included in all the meetings. It looks like they're right on schedule, and this is going to be a big help in helping Caltrans program the right projects at the right time. Infra closes on November 2nd. So, I'm sorry? Yes, ma'am. Infra closes on November 2nd. Again, I have to remind everybody that the criteria has changed from the fast lane. So make sure everybody, I'm kind of talking to everybody behind me more than I am in front of me, make sure you look at the criteria and make sure you're addressing the criteria that is there. Because if you just hand in the last application and it doesn't meet the new criteria, it's not going to float it. Tiger just closed October 16th, so we'll be evaluating that and hopefully getting the responses to that out soon. Also want to give a thank you to Greg Larson and Matt Hansen of Caltrans. They did a big effort helping us. We were doing a truck platooning demonstration that was done here in California. Had that done in Virginia also, so there's a lot of help and coordination from our headquarters and our resource center that Greg Larson and Matt Hansen gave to help us out in delivering that truck platooning thing. Lastly, yesterday I had the opportunity to talk at the statewide cultural resources group. So all of the Caltrans cultural resources staff, a couple hundred people at it. Thought it was very interesting. It was something that struck me in that circle. It's, they're the ones that are dealing with archaeology. They're the ones dealing with tribal consultation. They're the ones dealing with all that stuff. And we keep hearing about moving projects faster, and we're going to expedite the environmental process and do all those things. And every time we say that, I want to remind everybody, expediting the environmental process doesn't mean skipping it. It means doing it right. And I think that's an important part of that. and we can miss things if we don't do it right. And that circle, the passion that circle has, that Cultural Resources group was striking to me. You could see it's a very caring group. They care about the stuff they're working on. So I had the opportunity to talk to them a lot about tribal coordination. It's something I try, and hopefully we've heard me say that 1,000 times. We got to meet with the tribes. We got to get the tribes at the table before a decision's made, not handing them the decision and saying comment on it. So I want to continue to encourage everybody to do that. But it was striking to me, that circle of people that deal with the cultural resources, the personal pride that they take, and I see that, I get an opportunity to see that in the design groups and the planning and all the different areas of our profession. But I happened to be talking to them yesterday, so it was kind of a neat opportunity that I had, but it was very impressive to me to see the passion and the actual I just care about that. So I hope people get that when you see those documents. I think that's all that I have. Any questions for me?
Questions? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Regional agencies, Patricia.
Good afternoon, Chair Alvarado, Commissioners, and welcome to Commissioner Van Konynenberg. Do you guys want the 3-minute version or the 30-second version?
30 seconds will be fine.
Okay, I'm on it. The RTP.
You get extra points for that.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Tell that to Vince.
I am Patricia Chen with LA Metro, and the RTPA group talked about 3 different developments, all related to SB1 today. We heard representatives from the California Council of Governments and the Orange County Transportation Authority share the legislative status and things that are underway to get information to the public about the benefits of SB1, and everyone was listening with their ears perked up and asking how they could help and get involved. We also heard a report on the Local Streets and Roads Needs Assessment Committee, and they have plans to conduct their next survey, which will go out in January 2018, so very soon. And the plan is to include information on sort of a with and without SB1 scenario, so that it can help inform the public about what's at stake. Finally, the group discussed the draft guidelines for several SB1 funded programs, the local partnership, trade corridors, and enhancement, and solutions to congested corridors programs. And while there were questions and comments, a common theme was gratitude for the staff's very hard work and the collaborative approach that they use. So thank you.
Questions? Thank you. Okay. Rural Counties, Mara.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Mara Toomey, Chair of the Rural Counties Task Force. And first, I'd like to congratulate Commissioner Van Konynenberg on his appointment, and I look forward to working with you in the future. The Rural Counties Task Force met on September 22nd and discussed the following issues and concerns. In regard to the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program guidelines, the rural counties appreciate the Commission's consideration of their concerns regarding competitive balance, flexibility, and equity, and appreciate the efforts of Commission staff to develop the program guidelines in an open and transparent manner. The rural counties support the staff recommendation to adopt the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program guidelines as proposed. In regard to the Active Transportation Program augmentation, the rural counties appreciate that the additional funding provided by SB1 will enable the Commission to fund more critical projects in rural communities, enhancing safety, mobility, accessibility, and public health. The rural counties support the staff recommendation to adopt the Active Transportation Program augmentation as proposed. And finally, I'd like to congratulate Mitch, Teresa, Dawn, and Eric on their well-deserved promotions. This concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Keith, Self-Help Counties.
Thank you, Commissioner Alvarado, and welcome to the Commission
and we're looking forward to working with you as well. I'll be very brief. We've been working hard in preparation for the Focus on the Future conference, which will start on the 30th. We'll be hopefully seeing most of you, if not all of you, there. Self-Help Counties has been actively participating in the adoption and commenting on the guidelines. I think we're all well aware of that, and we're thankful for the process and the opportunity to provide comments. We're looking forward to a successful implementation of SB1. We're also looking forward to participating in an effort to educate the public on what the benefits are, especially when you leverage. And I think the key difference that I'd like to point out from my colleagues is the benefit of investing with the self-help counties is you do get to leverage those dollars. It's a real opportunity to maximize the return on the investment of SB1 on programs that have funding at the local level that we can really get out and put to work sooner than later. So we're going to be making every effort to make sure that the citizens of California know that the investments that they're making, not only in their local sales tax, but also on the SB1 gasoline purchase is returning to them and showing real results. And that's going to be a focus. We're looking at the next legislative session to continue to find ways to enhance our partnership with the department to streamline the delivery of projects, perhaps through additional authorizations of legislation and project delivery or other opportunities in partnering with them on directives that'll make things easier for everyone to work together. We're excited to continue our partnership with the Commission and look forward to working with you moving forward. With that, I can answer any questions.
Thank you. Thanks. Item 13, Garth.
Commissioners, as Malcolm mentioned, we're fortunate to have Tim Gubbins, who's the District Director for Caltrans District 5 in San Luis Obispo, here to talk about the Pfeiffer Canyon Bridge that was washed out last February due to the storm activity. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tim.
Thanks, Garth. Thank you, Chair, Commissioners. It's my honor to be here today. As Garth said, my name's Tim Gubbins. I'm the Caltrans District 5 Director, and I'm really pleased to be able to tell you a little about Pfeiffer Canyon Bridge and some of the innovative ways that we were able to deliver this. Malcolm earlier gave the punchline. It was open to the public last Friday, which was a very exciting day. I think over 300 members of the community, which percentage-wise is probably about 50%, showed up, and it was just a real exciting time. So the winter was fairly rough on Highway 1 in Monterey County. At one time, we had the road closed at 3 different areas. Pfeiffer Canyon Bridge, there was a major landslide which impacted the columns that support it. South of that, about 24 miles, was Paul's Slide, which we lost almost all of the roadway. We kept 11 feet, and that was enough that we were able to fix that, and that's currently open to traffic as well. And then Mud Creek landslide a little south of that. Had about 5.5 million yards movement, and we're working on that, and we expect to open that late summer next year. But today I wanted to focus on Pfeiffer Canyon, and especially with some of the innovation that we were able to bring to that. So the Pfeiffer Canyon Bridge was damaged beyond repair when some landslides undermined one of the 2 main support columns. As you can see, there's abutments on each end and 2 different columns in there, so it was a 3-span bridge. With the road moving, the column went with the land underneath the road moving, the column went with it and started pulling the bridge down. We immediately closed the bridge and did some inspections. It could hold, when it was just like this, it could hold a little bit of load. So under engineer supervision, we were able to do some emergency evacuations, 1 vehicle at a time. But we could not get in, because Paul's Slide to the south that I just mentioned, we could not get in food, propane, everything else at this community. So there were approximately 800 people landlocked at that time. And then the landslide kept moving, it was active, and pretty soon we had to close the entire bridge. We brought on our partners, Golden State Construction. The pictures just went kind of quickly, but we brought them in to help demolish and then reconstruct the bridge. The demolition took place over several days. We started with a 6,000 ton or pound wrecking ball. Bridge was still a little stronger than that, so we had to bring in a hoe ram on the end of an excavator and take it down. And so we finally demolished that on March 22nd of this year. And so then when we had that we came up with a new idea for the bridge. We did not want to take the time to do the studies of how deep the landslide was, when it would stop moving, and all of that stuff. So we decided to replace the three-span structure with a single span. And once we did the single span, we made the decision to go steel. Just for ease of construction, it could be fabricated, and as I said, we had Golden State on. They had ideas on how to best do some designs and construction. So because we brought them on in an emergency manner, they were able to start scouring the country. We had as Malcolm said, in a matter of days, we had our preliminary steel bridge design. And we thought we'd try and minimize the girders as much as we could, use even super high strength structural steel. Working with the contractor, they let us know there's none of that available. We did not want to wait for it to be poured and rolled and then fabricated, so we redesigned in a matter of a couple more days and got the girders ordered. This again is Gina, if you want to do the video on this. This is just an aerial view to give you a little bit of perspective of how steep the canyon is, what's around there. We figured out what the project was. We started looking at the steel. We quickly figured out steel was the most critical path. Getting girders, these girders were over 13 feet tall with the 8-foot wide flange. These were going to be the critical path. So the other thing, once we knew what the project was, we started reaching out to all of the affected stakeholders, including permit agencies. For those of you who know about our projects along the coast, you know the permitting can be a much larger challenge. Because of the critical nature of this, I'm happy to report everybody pitched in. We had a coastal permit the same day we asked. You know, we talked about what width we wanted for shoulders. They had been 0 beforehand, 0 to 2. We ended up with 6 foot that can accommodate hiking and biking and all that. We got it. Everyone knew that we had to do that. Because we had the contractor on board, we were able to utilize some of the design build type of things. So the complete design, we sequenced what areas we were designing based on what they needed to know. So we knew that the steel needed to be ordered, so we got the steel ordered so that wouldn't hold us up. We considered a temporary bridge. We had done that back in '95 in about 20 miles north of here. At the Carmel River Bridge, we had put in a temporary bridge just to restore. With the wooded area and the steep canyon that I showed you a minute ago, we could not fit in a temporary bridge. It would have the same footprint. So we may or may not have been able to do it quicker, but it would have then been in the way for the permanent bridge. Early on in the design process, Golden State Bridge told us they were investigating launching of the girders, which is putting them all together on one side and then just pulling them across. It had never been done in California. So we started working with some engineers in Canada that had done it through Golden State Bridge, and we decided that was the way to go. There was a curvature on the old bridge. When we do single span, you can't have a curved bridge that can be launched and pulled across, so we straightened out the alignment. After that, we then started doing a lot of simultaneous work. We were working on the bridge abutments, so we did those on site. The fabrication started. It was here in California, up at XKT in Mare Island. So that's where it was fabricated. They were then transported to be painted, actually very close to where we are today, Linden, California, about 30 miles away, did all the painting of the steel. We needed temporary support towers when we launched over just to rest on, and huge rollers and guides. And so we started working on all of these as we finalized the design. We did enough work to figure out the abutments, and then we worked on the next critical paths as the girders were being fabricated. The girders, the 310-foot long steel girders of that size, you can see the picture to the right on the screen. Somebody's walking in between them. The girders, 300 feet, could not be transported to site like that due to the length. To Big Sur, it's hard to get anything that's 300 feet, plus the weight of that size girder. So each of the 3 girders was divided. We built them in 5 pieces. Each of those 5 pieces was still over 60 tons. So the weight of the steel was well over 900 tons. So once the assembly was complete, the girders were launched across in very precise, methodical manner. As I said, this is the first time in the state of California we had this. Canada had done it, and I've heard some other states. I don't know where the examples are. But we had steel strands with hydraulic pistons. So during the launch, the girders that had already been assembled were pulled across the 310-foot canyon simultaneously. It was a very slow, exact process. It took us 4 days to pull it over. We wanted to make sure it was in the exact right. And so as each piston cycled through, the entire assembly was pulled in about 12 to 18-inch increments. And so we had to pull it 310 feet a foot at a time. It was very, very fun to watch over that week that it happened. But since I know the chair's desire for timeliness, we have a time lapse that will shrink those 4 days. And so if you'll notice when it gets to the tower, there's a slight adjustment when we take a roller out, and it actually moves up.
That would have been interesting.
Right. So that was my 4-day presentation, Chair. But again, after it was rolled out, the entire assembly was raised a little more to get the rollers out and get out all the guides, and then we had to slowly lower it into place. And then once we lowered it, we began all the traditional construction methods for the deck and preparing the final roadway surface. And again, we had aimed to open it just as soon as we could. Early on, we had thought this would take a very long time. We challenged ourselves to get it done by the end of September. As I told my boss that, he shared it with agency, the governor in the world. And so that kind of locked us in.
They tend to do that.
And so they kind of locked us into a September 30. And if we didn't aim for that, we might not have it open yet today. Things came up during construction, but we overcame most of them. We still went 13 days into October, but all in all, that was still very good. The next real innovative thing that I feel we did on this was the effective communication. We had our normal PDT, project development team meetings. We had field meetings, and we did news flashes, the Caltrans news flashes. We did an animation of the launching sequence you just saw. But most importantly, we were talking to the local citizens that had been landlocked. They were very insistent on the temporary bridge. When we walked the site with them, showed them where a temporary bridge would go and how it would be in the way, and they'd be looking at years for the permanent replacement. We quickly resolved to just keep going full force on the permanent one. My PIO office was sending out 3 times a day updates on what was happening out there. For the first couple months, we were doing them 3 times a week, and then we were having multiple phone calls. Then we moved twice a week. For the last couple of months, now that we had it on track, we were doing once a week phone calls with Unified Command, which was fire, state parks, all the emergency operators, and the county. And then we were doing a weekly update as well. Because the community and state parks and all the agencies were so involved, they found another way to restore at least a little bit of a pathway. There's a state park that we go over, and there were requests for a trail through the state park, because people were trying to do it themselves and just bushwhacking through. And State Parks was resistant at first, but again, with all the information that was out there and what was known for the emergency to get people their food, to get school kids to school, they were able to get permission and do a new trail, had help from State Parks, California Conservation Corps, and local volunteers. And so they actually created a trail that was about a 45-minute diversion around to walk. And we talked to some families that had school kids going to different schools, so they would take it 4 to 5 times a day. So again, the resilient Big Sur community got in even better shape. And so again, I just wanted to end with this. It's the innovative partnership that we had with Golden State Bridge. We used that for the design. We used it for the construction methods. We had great relationships with all of the different agencies involved. And A bridge like this, if we would have just noticed it was done with its useful life, optimistically, from planning to construction, likely would have been 7 to 8 years with our design and permitting and everything else. And, yeah, I think I'm hearing agreement that, yeah, optimistically. The fact that we were able to open this less than 8 months after the first damage, as Malcolm had said, I could not be more proud of the team that worked on it and all the support we got from everyone. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions or talk about any of the other things on the coast.
I want to be the first to congratulate you. I mean, this is this is the kind of stuff that we need to hear over and over. Taxpayer dollars well spent, cooperation between the contractor and Caltrans. Everything just went right, and that's a testament to the hard work that you folks put out. So congratulations.
Mr. Chair, I don't, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't recall an invite to see that being done.
I'm sorry about that. We were going so fast.
Well, he doesn't.
I think we had mailed in and it may have been cut off. My apologies.
I might not even accept that excuse.
That's the best I could think of.
Mr. Chairman, one of the things that, and again, congratulations, and we kind of talked a little bit about this at CTC too, is to think about a way to add a button to our websites, and the one link would be success stories. And especially above and beyond, when you can go from 8 years to 8 months, you couldn't obviously do this in a soundbite or in a long presentation like this on a website, but those kind of success stories are places that we would love to start highlighting and sending people to say, this is what Caltrans can do that's extraordinary. And I think that there's stories like that everywhere, but this is worthy of getting some media attention and obviously viraling the unusual nature of this. So I would commend you to think about this, not just from this great example, but around the state, what other above and beyond that Caltrans is doing that the public should be aware of. And the more we start highlighting each other's good behavior, I think it tends to viral. So congratulations again.
Yeah, I want to add to the thanks, and I think it was just very impressive and show that thing far and wide. That video should get onto network news channels someplace. I mean, you see CBS Sunday Morning, those kind of shows. That's the kind of stuff that shows great American ingenuity at a time of need. And speaking of that, you mentioned the Mud Creek slide. So now I remember reading someplace, and I just was pulling up some release. You're going to go over. Can you just kind of give us a sense of the timing on that? Only because I drive that route as often as I can, and I want to know when I can do it again.
Yes,
I'm sure a lot of other people do too.
We are looking at that for next summer because of the sheer magnitude. If the board would like, I have a couple pictures just to show how large that is.
Added a lot of coastline. Huh?
Yes. So Mud Creek, it's approximately 37 miles south. We had 5.5 million yards moved downslope. So that was 50 acres of land moved out. So again, I won't want to read this to you, but we created 15 acres of new coastline. My dad always said, buy near the coast. We're not making new, but we did.
You in Hawaii.
And so prior to this is a picture prior to the landslide. You can see the light green area out in the ocean. That's where it slid to, and there's a red line up there that it slid from. And if you'd like to see what that looked like, it was right like that. And so that was just huge. The current state is like this. You can see some construction paths we have through there. I don't know if you can tell in the middle of the picture, there's some little boxes. Yeah. Those are about 15 rail cars that are cabled together for a temporary worker protection. Above there are such large rocks and boulders that are still coming down that we have those to protect the work that's happening underneath. And it's a good thing that we did. Just on Sunday, well, they told me it's a small one, about the size of this podium, rock came and slammed into those cars that are up there. But it's been moving ever since. And so we are just stabilizing. The ground has stabilized itself. So we are just working there. If you see on the bottom of the picture, there's a rock revetment. Working there on the north end, and we have something similar on the south, we have that rock revetment, and we're building an engineered fill all the way up to the roadway. So this is not a structural fix, but it is just so large that we cannot do it any quicker. Believe me, I've heard from the Chambers of Commerce in San Simeon and Cambria of this summer they didn't have through traffic. They want to make sure they do next summer. They have made it the year before they had a fire, the Sobranos fire. And so we know what roads do for the economy of this state. We know the lifeline for everything else, but the economy, people getting to school. So we're working as quick as we can. And we have monitoring stations out there. We've borrowed some technology from mines, so they can see where the walls of mines might collapse. We've used that to see what the activity is, so that we can know when it's safe to go out and work. So we're doing everything we can to work as expeditiously as we can on that.
Tim, I'd like to personally thank you and District 5 and all of Caltrans. I've been on this commission long enough to go through a number of emergencies, and this is where Caltrans really shines. I mean, every emergency that I've observed over the years, you guys have been on top of it and got it done in record time. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, before we move forward, here we go again. We have 30 speakers lined up right now for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 items. So we've got to get through 30 speakers and all of our business today. So be as brief as you can. And we'll go with item 14. Garth.
Commissioners, today we have James Corliss, who's the Chief Executive Officer at the Sacramento Area Council of Governments, or SACOG, and he's going to be providing an overview of a recently launched effort that they call Civic Lab Initiative and some other planning efforts that are underway in the Sacramento region. Mr. Corliss was appointed as SACOG CEO in April of this year, and with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Corliss.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, thanks very much. Good afternoon. I heard your plea to keep it brief. I'll do my best. Very delighted to be at the helm of SACOG, one of your council's governments statewide, after spending 8 years in Washington, D.C., working on things like MAP 21, the FAST Act, the Tiger program, the Fast Lane program. I can tell you this is where the action is, and that story that you just heard is one of the reasons why this is still one of the most innovative states in the country. I do want to thank you for your leadership on Senate Bill 1. We have 31 board members at SACOG. I've made it a point to visit each and every one of them. They drive me around their jurisdictions, and I'm convinced take me to the worst roads possible. So as we bump up and down, they talk to me about how important SB 1 is, and we're going to do our part to get that story told and get that word out there. As Garth mentioned, just this morning, I actually did 2 things that I want to impress upon you as why your job and your role here is so important. The first is we just had our press conference for the Amazon HQ2 bid, as I'm sure there were many other press conferences around. But if you read the Amazon HQ2 bid, it reads as a 21st century economic competitiveness RFP. It talks about transportation. It talks about low congestion. It talks about being able to move around in the community, transportation options. And yes, even as a mega region, it talks about the rail connections that the San Joaquins and the Capital Corridors provide that frankly is the only reason that we as a Sacramento region can be competitive in that bid. So thank you for your investments in those. And my second thing I did this morning was to open a new initiative that we're calling Civic Lab, as Garth mentioned. I do want to just give you a little bit of a sense of what this is because we're real excited about it. We're pretty convinced that just as Uber disrupted the taxi industry the last 5 years, we're about to go through a major disruption in the next 5 years. This is going to affect public transit, buses, trains, automated vehicles. This is unlike we've ever seen, maybe in a century. This Civic Lab initiative, in our 6 counties in the SACOG region, we asked cities and counties and transit districts to come forward with problems they are trying to solve, transportation challenges that they're trying to solve. We're going to put them in a 9-month academy, get state, national experts, and help them design pilot projects, small projects, kind of like a startup. And then our goal is to fund those pilot projects at the end of these 9 months. For example, we have real problems with our light rail stations filling up by 7 a.m. in the morning. There's no more parking. People just keep on going on the freeway. Can we figure out some other way than a once-an-hour bus to get people from their homes to those light rail stations, partnering with Uber or Lyft to the private sector? For example, rural transit. Once-an-hour service is not cutting it in rural areas. As much as that's a lifeline, we need to re-envision and rethink what it means to have rural transit. And lastly, one I'm real excited about is high school internships. We have a lot of low-income youth in the Sacramento region that are taking their first job experience over summer and getting to construction sites, being trained what it means to actually work with their hands and have a full-time job. Yet, they're showing up an hour late because they're relying on family members for a ride, they're relying on a bus to get 2 connections, and you know, as an employer, you can't have your employees show up an hour late. That team has actually come into Civic Lab to design a closed system, sort of Uber-like app that could get shuttles and vans to get those kids to work on time, so their first job experience is a positive one, and their employer will keep hiring them full-time. So that's Civic Lab. It launched today. It's 9 months long. We are using some of the SB1 planning funds to look at these kinds of innovative solutions. We're real excited about it. We thought we'd have 4 or 5 teams. We had 23 teams apply from our 6-county region, so we had to turn people away. We want to be the test bed of the state capitol. In the backyard of the state capitol, the most innovative state in the country, we want to be the place that we test these kinds of ideas. Your support is critical. SB1 funds are critical. And I would be happy to come back to you when we actually have some results. Much like a startup, we know that we're going to try some things and fail. We're ready to fail and open source that failure so other people can learn from us. So we're a leader as a region and as a state, and that's how you get to success. So again, I thank you so much for your leadership. I'm proud to be back in California and at the helm of the Council of Governments and undertake all the important work that we have here to do. Happy to answer questions if you have any.
Thank you. Item 15.
Hello, Commissioners. So item 15 is the state and federal legislative matters item. I'll try to keep this very short. The Commission took positions on 10 bills this year. 7 of those bills were signed into law. 7 of those measures were signed into law. That's really great. Good job, everybody. There was a bill that was signed into law in the last weekend that the governor had the ability to, that is discussed in the book item, AB 179. It was a Cervantes bill. Beyond requiring the governor to consider all types of expertise when appointing members to the commission, it also requires the commission to hold joint meetings with the Air Resources Board twice a year. And commission staff will begin working right away with ARB staff to figure out how that's going to work and how that will look. And we will bring that back to you in December. And if you have any other questions about any of that or any other legislation, please let me know.
Good, thank you. Item 16.
Do you want to do an intro, Aaron?
Yes, I do. Okay. Stephen Keck with Caltrans will come up and present a budget and allocation capacity.
Thank you, Mary. That's not what I meant, but that's great.
Okay, Stephen, again, don't get married to the...
I'll be as quick as I can be.
Very good.
I'll start with allocation capacity. You'll note
PowerPoints just make me nervous.
I'm good to go. This is a revised look at allocation capacity that now shows, in addition to the amounts allocated by program, the percent of each program allocated. So to date, the Commission's allocated $1.6 billion out of $3.8 billion in capacity. Most of that in the Stip and Shop, as you might expect. Those 2 programs are running right around 50%, which is pretty good for this time of the year. Your other programs, especially TIRCP, is a relatively new program. They're getting off to a slightly slower start. We expect full allocation by the end of the year. At a previous meeting, I mentioned I would begin reporting on a quarterly basis on G12 capacity and how it's being used. G12 capacity is your delegation to the department to make very minor changes up or down to projects on an individual basis. The chart on this page shows a closeout for 2016-17. There were 135 project increases last year for a total of $40 million. Notably, though, there were 232 decreases in project costs, saving $162 million. All added up, the G12 capacity, or the G12 savings for last year was about $122 million. So this is a pretty good story. The G12 is intended to be net neutral, but net negative is even better. For the first quarter of this year, we have about 39 project increases for $17 million and 37 project decreases for $34 million, totaling about $18 million in savings so far this year in the first quarter. I don't think Vince mentioned this, but I wanted to bring up, we are under a continuing resolution for federal funding. It probably wasn't mentioned because for the first time ever in my career, it was passed well in advance of the end of the fiscal year. So there was some forward thinking here. It continues through December 8th. It gives us a fabulous fraction of 69/365 of our funding for the year. Which is a bit awkward, but it is something we don't have to make any pauses on. We can keep going full steam ahead. Vince mentioned the $274 million in August redistribution that we received. I'll note we are continually successful in receiving August redistribution because we plan for it. This is something that's in our fund estimate. We assume we're going to get this money. We build projects for it. Right? We don't wait to see if we're going to get the money. We plan for this. That's why we are successful. I'm going to spend a little time on this because it's important. Vince mentioned before that Texas is neck and neck with California in terms of total federal funding. That's because they use a lot of gas in Texas. But they get about the same amount that we do in total funding from the feds. In fact, earlier this year, they received more than we did. Last year, we got more. They got more. Last year, they got more. We overtook them again. Total regular federal funding. But here is August redistribution for the top 5 states for the last 5 years. Texas is number 2 by a long shot. We got about 40% more in August redistribution than Texas did because we're consistently ready for it. We build it into our plans. We're ready for it. We ask for it, and we get it. So our share of the total is about the same every year, 9 or 10%, but we're consistently ready for it, and we benefit from it. So that's my good news story for August redistribution and the end of my presentation. So I'll be happy to take questions if you have any.
Can't believe that.
Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a quick one. So how are you sharing the good news on savings?
I can tell you.
Yes, I know. And so...
So in terms of G12 savings, you know, that's actually something that we have always reported in our quarterly reports, but it wasn't getting a lot of traction. So now I've added it to my presentation to make sure it gets out here. I suppose we can go even further and make sure folks are aware, of how this is important to.
We've put out press releases on August redistribution. You got to be a pretty big transportation wonk to even care about it, but we do put out press releases every time we get a big chunk of money from the feds.
It could be the way it's framed. That's all I'm saying. Just an idea to think about. Happy to help.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Stephen. Okay, here we go. We've got speakers lined up for item 17. So in advance, it's a 3-minute time limit. Keep track here. When you have 1 minute left, I'll raise my hand. We're going to strictly enforce it. 30 speakers, that's 90 minutes. You're on, Mitchell.
Do I get 90 minutes also?
No.
This item is a SB1 implementation update. It's noticed as an action item. However, no specific action is being requested. Susan, in her executive director's report, mentioned the guidelines on our agenda today, so I won't reiterate those, but I will note again that on our agenda today is the first SB1 funded program to be adopted by the Commission, the statewide and small urban and rural components of the 2017 Active Transportation Augmentation. Over the next month, the Commission will hold hearings and workshops on the ITIP, the Solutions for Congested Corridors program, and on accountability guidelines. As is Commission's practice, the guidelines for these programs will be reevaluated at the start of each programming cycle to look for lessons learned and for ways to improve the program. And towards that end, also beginning this month, will be workshops for the development of guidelines for the 2018 Active Transportation Program. By November, the Commission will have adopted guidelines to shape almost $19 billion in investments that will reduce congestion, improve the environment, and facilitate economic development through the efficient movement of goods and people. In terms of communicating this information, we've been working closely with Caltrans and the State Transportation Agency on the Rebuild CA website. We're looking at, as soon as November 1st, putting information on that website in a map in terms of the city and county project lists under the Local Streets and Roads program, with the Active Transportation Program projects that the Commission will be adopting today, and the many SHOP projects that are being advanced. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okey-doke. Supervisor Miguel, I can't read the last of it, so. Supervisor Miguel.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Miguel Villalpudua. I'm the co-chair of the San Joaquin Board of Supervisors, and I thank you for letting me speak today. I wrote a statement. I'd like to read it to you, please. When I signed letter of support for what became SB1 this past March, I was hopeful. When the legislature passed SB1 in April, I was very thankful. Standing before you here today, I'm grateful and excited to see the transformation of power of this legislation play out in the years to come. SB1 is critical to providing the funding needed to address the ever-growing unmet transportation infrastructure needs across our great state. San Joaquin County has bridges that are literally crumbling, where we have to either close the bridge or for immediate emergency repairs or place weighted restrictions on vehicles utilizing some bridges. Thanks to being a self-help county, due to our local transportation sales tax measure, while our 1,600 miles of roads are somewhat decent condition, it would still require over $200 million to get them to an overall state of good condition. Not to mention another $230 million to address our 360 bridges. Additionally, let me not forget about the unmet funding needs to accommodate the movement of goods and services throughout our county roads. Simply put, SB1 will effectively double our annual state transportation revenue. It's nothing short of a game changer. For us, the local government, it will allow us not to simply tread water and maintain our transportation infrastructure, but to actually start cutting into and reducing those large numbers I just noted. I understand the SB1 legislation effectively assigned the Commission with the daunting task of developing guidelines for the various funding programs in SB1. With extremely tight time constraints, I further understand that CTC has taken a very realistic approach to crafting these guidelines and worked very well with local state agencies throughout the process. For that, on behalf of San Joaquin County, I want to extend my sincere gratitude to you and your staff. It is imperative that we all work together to show to the voters with what we do with these funds that we use in an expeditious manner and to improve our transportation infrastructure. We look forward to fulfilling this promise and successfully implementing SB1. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions? Chris Bellaggi, and then Kevin McAllister.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. So if I get it in 30 seconds, I get $5 million more, right? Okay, I'll give it a shot.
You've already used 8.
Hey, all right. Vince, I checked the camera. We're okay. Yeah. Good afternoon. I'm Chris Bellaggi, Director of Public Works for the San Joaquin County. So all I have to say is my boss said everything that I had to say, and I'm good. Right? How about that? Well, kidding aside, right, I want to thank the Assemblymember Frazier for his leadership in taking on this important task. And I know that I've talked to you folks, in the capacity of a state employee, working for transportation, representing a private sector. Now I'm before you representing a local agency. So I've seen all 3 sides of it, and I know how important this bill is and this money is for not just for the roads, but also for the economy of our state as well. And when we talk about infrastructure crumbling, we had 3 close calls just this year alone. Actually, a bridge literally last week was near the state of collapse. And we looked at, we inspect these structures twice a year actually. And we just came to find out through one of the constituents who called in say, hey, there's a pothole in this road. We went there to see. The bridge has actually settled. The cap had crushed, literally. So we had to go and fix it. And this past winter, we had to close, a couple of bridges because they could not take the loads that they were designed originally for. So such is the state of our infrastructure right now, and we can leave it for luck, actually. So this bill and this funding that we're going to be getting is going to be very critical to keep up the infrastructure needs. And the projects that we submitted to you, to the commission for the SB1, for $4.7 million in funding that we're slated to get, we have projects given to you for about $8-9 million, and such is the need for us to fix this infrastructure. I know that you're not going to give me $9 million, but I want the public to know that the need is out there, that far outpaces the availability of the funding that we have, and we're ready to go deliver that. We were now waiting for this November date to come around so we can go and get our projects ready. So we are ready to go put that money to work and get that infrastructure projects delivered. And I also want to thank the commission staff working with us in a meaningful way, developing these guidelines so that we can get these projects delivered on time and show to the public that how much needed this money was for the California's infrastructure. So thank you again, and that was 2 minutes and 20 seconds according to my iPhone.
2 minutes and 50 seconds.
Oh, man. I still beat it by 10 seconds. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Matt Machado, and then Jared Sanchez.
I forgot Kevin McAllister.
Kevin McAllister.
Do I get
and then
an extra 30
Matt Machado, and then Jared Sanchez.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Kevin McAllister. I'm the Director of Public Works for the County of Kings, and I'm here to brief you on the impact of SB1 for Kings County. The Road Accountability Act of 2017 was signed into law by Governor Brown on April 28th of this year. The RMRA account provided by SB1 will provide an estimated $36 million for Kings County over the next 10 years. And that includes almost $1.2 million this year alone, which we intend to use for road maintenance, rehabilitation, and safety projects. In contrast, or in comparison, our HUDA account would normally bring in $2 million a year. So basically, to go along with what the supervisor previously said, it's doubling the amount of money available to us. Our pavement management system provides a 10-year work plan to bring our PCI of a road system from the present value of 45 to a statewide average of 61. Coincidentally, the revenue projections of SB1 for Kings County is just the right amount that we need in order to meet that goal. We have prepared a list of projects for fiscal year 17-18 from this 10-year plan. This list of roads and streets recognizes the recommendation of our pavement management system while allowing us to exercise good engineering judgment and facts not considered by the mechanics of the software. It's important to note that this list of projects for us includes some roads and streets that haven't seen substantial maintenance for decades and would most likely not see such maintenance anytime soon if we didn't have the funding provided by SB1. Likewise, without the ongoing influx of this cash from SB1, the PCI of Kings County roads will continue to drop, as it will in other cities and counties. Our plan this year is to use the RMRA funds to chip seal an additional 29 miles of road, provide an AC overlay on 1 mile of highway. We'll place a cape seal on some 17 miles of road, and 2 miles of road will get a microsurfacing seal, which is great for us. I'm grateful for all the blood, sweat, toil, and maybe even tears that went into making this legislation a reality. My thanks, heartfelt thanks to CSAC staff, to your commission staff, and the unnamed scores of people working behind the scenes to bring this reality to place. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions? Thank you. Matt Machado, then Jared Sanchez.
All right. Good afternoon, Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Matt Machado. I'm the Director of Public Works for Stanislaus County. Welcome to Stanislaus County. In our county, we have a $12 billion ag industry, and it absolutely depends on a good road system, a well-maintained system. And so our plan to implement SB1 is through a map that I'm sharing with you today. That's a 3-year implementation plan, and I'll just very quickly highlight one of those projects that we proposed in the springtime. On the eastern side of our county, we have a road named Warnerville. There's a 3-mile segment there that is dirt today. It serves literally tens of thousands of acres of permanent crop. Certain times of the year, it's nearly impassable. We can hardly get trucks through there. The heavy trucks destroy it very quickly. So this spring, because of SB1, we will be reconstructing their road with a solid base and a solid surface on the top. It's a huge victory for our ag economy, a $12 billion ag economy that serves the nation very, very well. Thank you for all your support. Thank you to Assemblymember Frazier for your support. Without all of you together, we wouldn't be here, but we're here and we're going to make good on our promise to implement SB1. Thank you.
Thank you. Jared Sanchez.
Hi, Commissioners. Jared Sanchez with the California Bicycle Coalition. CalBike appreciates and values the important and difficult work CTC staff has done for implementation throughout the various workshops, including outside the workshops, being responsive via email or by phone. We're fully aware of the expedited time frame and the added work burden because of it, so thank you so much for all the hard work thus far. The investments of SB1 is a tremendous opportunity to mend our transportation system and to redress transportation injustices millions of Californians face, rather than to cement the many documented inequities and unsustainable practices embedded in the current system. I'm happy to have the opportunity to uplift again our coalition's 10 principles for implementation for SB1 investments. Many transportation stakeholders put a lot of work into these principles, and our advocacy work reflects decades of study and thousands of transportation and environmental justice experts and scholars. And I am privileged to devote my time in the middle of the afternoon on a weekday across the state to be here and to share and to do my best to represent those that cannot be here. If I would summarize the principles, 3 important facets include: 1, funding highest transportation needs based on social equity and environmental justice. 2, ensure the Commission undertakes inclusive outreach and engagement throughout the guidelines process. And 3, dramatically reduce toxic pollutants and climate change impacts that disproportionately harm low-income communities and communities of color. I appreciate CTC staff meeting with environmental and transportation justice advocates in Sacramento and the Bay Area. I would love to lead further conversations in which we may be able to further institutionalize millions of Californians' concerns that continue to be marginalized in the transportation decision-making process, especially now with the incoming SB1 funds. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Okay.
Commissioners, Undersecretary Annis has something to share with you all.
I'm happy to provide an update on the Transportation Inspector General. The governor's website just posted his appointment of Ms. Irena Ortega to be the Transportation Inspector General, and I do have the privilege of knowing Irena. She serves on among her many duties, she's currently at the California Department of Finance as a Chief Deputy Director there, but she and I both sit in for our bosses on the State Infrastructure Bank, so I see her every few weeks. But I think Irena's a great choice. She's, as I mentioned, has been at the Department of Finance since 2013. Prior to that, she was with the California State Association of Counties, and prior to that, the Judicial Council. She has a Master of Public Policy degree from Harvard University. So I think that combination of skills, both the finance background, working with counties and local governments, I think is going to be very valuable in this role, and certainly look forward to seeing her in the future, and hopefully we can invite her to a CTC meeting soon as well to hear her vision for that office.
Very good. Okay, item 18, Teresa.
Commissioners, item 18 is an action item. There's a yellow replacement item in your package. This item is an amendment to the Letter of No Prejudice Guidelines. The recent passage of AB 115 and AB 135 authorized the approval of LOMPs to projects programmed for funding from the Active Transportation Program, the Local Partnership Program, the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program, and the Solutions for Congested Corridor Program. This amendment adds these programs to the LOMP guidelines. This will allow implementing agencies to advance their projects using their own funds by requesting an LOMP prior to allocation. This request is consistent with statute. Staff recommends your approval.
Second.
There's a motion by Gilmetti and a second by Madaffer. We have no speakers on this?
Not on 18, no.
Okay. Any questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, we're going to have a staff report, and then we'll open up the hearing for the Active Transportation Program.
Commissioners, tab 19 is a hearing on the 2017 Active Transportation Program augmentation for the staff recommendations for the statewide and small urban and rural components of the program. The 2017 ATP augmentation was made possible because of SB1 allocates $100 million from RMRA starting in fiscal year 17-18. The initial programming for the augmentation was in fiscal year 17-18 and 18-19. However, capacity was opened up in 1920 and 2021 because of projects that were previously programmed moving forward. The 2017 ATP augmentation consists of $102 million for the three ATP components, the statewide, the small urban and rural, and the MPO. The funding was made available to projects that were programmed in the 2017 ATP that can be delivered earlier, and projects that applied in 2017 but were not selected. Guidelines and the fund estimate were adopted at the June meeting. Applications were due on June 30th. We received 232 applications for projects requesting funds of about $500 million. Staff recommendations were made available on August 31st and posted on the Commission's website. Staff recommendations are based on the funding levels, the scores that the projects received in the 2017 ATP, deliverability, statutory requirements, and Commission policies. The statewide component staff recommendations consist of 17 previously awarded projects valued at $79,936,000 advancing into 17-18 and 18-19. So those projects will be able to get started right away. And also 54 new projects valued at $135,172,000, sorry, requesting $198,851,000 of ATP funds. In the small urban and rural component, the staff recommendations consist of 5 previously awarded projects valued at $19,876,000, advancing into years 17-18 and 18-19, and 9 new projects valued at $44,972,000, requesting $18,464,000 of ATP funds. Many of the projects that were not awarded in the statewide component are still eligible for the MPO funding component. Staff will bring forward the MPO recommendations at the December meeting. Commission staff had about 2 months from the guidelines adoption to staff recommendations. This was a very accelerated process, and this was only made possible by the help of all of the CTC staff, which is the best team in the world. I want to particularly thank Don Chesser and Mitch Weiss for their help. I would also like to thank Caltrans staff, Teresa McWilliams and Ted Davini. They performed the deliverability reviews on all the projects, and they did it very quickly and very efficiently. I'd also like to thank all my regional agency contacts, because I could not do my work without them, and the advocates who helped make the program better. Finally, I want to thank all of the many cities, counties, school districts, tribal governments, health departments, and other ATP applicants who have stuck with the program even when it seemed impossible to get funded. They kept applying to the program because they're committed to making their kids safer on their way to school, making it easier for people in car-poor areas to access transit, and to make their communities more livable. Because of the additional funding from SB1, the ATP is able to fund projects in areas that have not been very successful in the ATP in the past. One of these is El Dorado County. The El Dorado County has 2 projects that are being recommended for funding in this augmentation. In the past 3 cycles, they've only been successful for 1 other grant. Another example is in Sunnyvale, the Safe Routes to School project in Santa Clara County. This is the only Santa Clara County project successful in the statewide component. Another comes from our good friends in Mono County, who are being recommended for the Bridgeport Main Street Revitalization Project. Again, this is only the first one that they've had recommended in the statewide program. Based on the results of this augmentation, staff is confident that the additional SB1 funding will provide better geographic equity in the program and ensure that we're funding the best projects that best meet the goals of the project and not best meet the goals of the program and not just the applications that score the highest. Finally, staff would like to say that having more money doesn't solve all problems, but it sure does help. Staff recommends opening up the hearing for comment.
Any questions before we do that? Okay, the hearing is now open. Woodrow Dioria, followed by Debbie Hale.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Chair Alvarado. Woodrow Deloria with the El Dorado County Transportation Commission, and I just want to make one point of clarification. The City of Placerville is the only jurisdiction that has received an ATP project in the County of El Dorado. El Dorado County itself, the unincorporated area, has not received any projects. So with that, I'd first like to thank your Commission, Director Branson and staff for consideration of this ATP augmentation in such a timely fashion and without the undue burden of a new application process. This augmentation does represent El Dorado County's first chance to deliver an ATP-funded project, one of which will improve pedestrian and ADA safety due to construction of a sidewalk along a major pedestrian corridor. The other project will extend an interregional trail by constructing a Class 1 multi-use path between a primary commercial area and transit hub to the historic community of El Dorado. And I mentioned that this is our first opportunity to deliver projects with ATP funding, but this has not been for a lack of trying, and so we're very grateful for this opportunity. Our jurisdictions have submitted multiple projects for consideration over the past 3 cycles and have not been successful due to their inability to capture the additional points for serving a disadvantaged community as defined in the ATP guidance. That is not to say that these projects don't serve disadvantaged and impoverished residents throughout our communities. It is simply that we don't have dense disadvantaged concentrations that can be defined by a given geography. Rather, they are dispersed throughout the communities of the Foothill region. We do greatly appreciate your leadership delivering this and all of the SB1 programs in a timely and effective manner to ensure that our region and the state realizes the many benefits it does provide. And I can assure you that we do hear your call and are ready to start delivering projects and celebrate this new and ongoing investment in our transportation system. With the recent passage of SB1, our jurisdictions have a rekindled interest in the ATP and a strong desire to apply for funding to support projects to serve our local and regional constituents and contribute to the state's air quality goals. We're very grateful for the hard work that has gone into securing the additional $100 million in ATP funding so that we can deliver active transportation projects throughout our rural and urban foothill communities. We'd also like to acknowledge the great outreach and coordination that Director Brunson and staff has provided throughout the ATP process. And I'd like to specifically thank CTC staff Lori Waters, who's been an absolute champion for the ATP project, been very patient and considerate listening to all of our voices while developing the guidelines and the application process requirements that better align with our resources and the needs of our local jurisdictions. We plan to continue working with Director Branson and CTC staff on the development of the Cycle 4 guidelines, and we are hopeful that this augmentation will be the first of many more opportunities for us to deliver active transportation projects. Should your commission approve the projects being considered today, we do plan to publish a press release to highlight and celebrate our first success in securing ATP funding, but also to highlight the success of the additional SB1 funds. Thank you.
Debbie Hale, then Patricia Chen.
Hello, thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Debbie Hale, Executive Director with the Transportation Agency for Monterey County. I just wanted to thank your staff, Lori Waters in particular, but also Director Susan Branson, for recommending our Moss Landing project in the Active Transportation Program for funding. This project is a critical link in the Monterey Bay Sanctuary Scenic Trail. Right now, folks on the north end of the harbor can't walk a small distance to the south end of the harbor because there's no pedestrian path, and it's very dangerous for bicyclists to cross that section. So this grant will match local and federal funds to provide a safe access route across that connection and to link with then the southern end of the Sanctuary Scenic Trail. So we're very appreciative of the staff recommendation for this landmark project, and the prior speaker stole my thunder. I issued the notice staff be on hold to write your press release saying, here's SB1 funding at work. California Transportation Commission is putting that money out there to help out with the public. So I hope you can do so. And again, thank you for all the staff assistance and guidance with this.
Thank you. Patricia Chen, and then Chanel Fletcher.
Thank you. Metro supports the staff recommendation in item number 20. And we just want to say we welcome the programming of the first action with SB1 funded projects that, of course, will directly accrue to jurisdictions in our area. We have a tremendous need for this type of projects, and I just want to highlight that the recommendation includes a first last mile project, complete streets, a gap closure, and a safe routes to school project, among others. So quite the variety of very much needed projects. We also plan to publish a press release to share this news with the public as soon as you have acted. And just once again want to say thank you, and thank you also to Assemblyman Frazier for your leadership.
Thank you. Ms. Fletcher, and then Kenneth Cow.
So my name is Chanel Fletcher. I'm with Climate Plan. We are a statewide network of over 50 nonprofit organizations, and we are very focused on the connection between land use and climate change. I am up here with good news, and I think what we really just wanted to say was a huge thank you to all of you for your leadership, particularly to Assemblymember Frazier. I think on SB1, we are very, very excited to see this augmentation to ATP. It's something that we have really pushed for and are excited. I think your staff has been amazing. Particularly, I would give a shout out to Lori because probably no one else will, or maybe somebody else will. Maybe you guys will. But I think Lori's been a tireless advocate for this program, and it's been a joy working with her, and we are very excited to partner with her on Cycle 4. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Kenneth, and then Ron DeCarli.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Kenneth Cow with MTC. I just wanted to thank you and thank staff for all the hard work on ATP augmentation. The MTC region is expected to receive about $10 million. Again, all these projects would not be possible without the passage of SB1. And on a side note, on the regional side, MTC has $16 million, which our commission approved last month, and we'll be submitting that to your commission later today for your consideration in December. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ron DeCarli, then Phil Dow.
Thank you very much, Chairman Alvarado and Commissioners. I'm Ron DeCarli, Executive Director of the San Luis Obispo Council of Governments. We really want to thank you for all your leadership in AB1, SB1, getting that measure passed, securing a ATP augmentation as part of that bill. We've been very active in the ATP program. We were one of those counties that's been submitting every year, 10 to 14 projects. We've only gotten a couple of projects funded. We had 3 that were submitted this last cycle. They were not funded. With SB1, with this augmentation, they are now being recommended for funded. We really want to compliment your staff, Caltrans staff, for going down that list very cost effectively, making sure the schedules are right, the dollar amounts are right, but not re-ranking those projects. I wanted to highlight at least one project that I think is very important. It's the Templeton to Tassdale connector. It connects, it's along Highway 101, is the only access between these two communities. It's a freeway. So what this pathway does is provide a dedicated pathway to get bicyclists and pedestrians off US 101, a freeway. So it's a safety measure. It'll be one of those areas in the state where we're getting pedestrians and cyclists off a freeway. We really appreciate it. We can't wait to see this project move forward. And we will be working very close on getting press releases out. We've been very active on SB1 in our county and will continue to do so. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Phil Dow, and then Jose Luis Casores.
Mr. Chairman, commissioners, and staff, appreciate being here. Just like many behind me, we've been to a whole heap of meetings the last several months. I want to just two things. Number one, very supportive of not only the process but the recommendations coming from staff. And number two, none of the jurisdictions in my area benefit from these recommendations. I want credibility points. Thank you.
Jose Luis.
Jose Luis Cáceres with the Sacramento Area Council of Governments. We're an MPO and RTPA, and we are very pleased with the recommendation going before you today. Same as some other folks, I want to point out that Lori Waters has done amazing work, high levels of customer service. You can tell that she listens when we have questions and comments. Also, Mitch Weiss. It's a pleasure always working with him.
Okay, you get extra time for that.
You can always count on honest and frank answers, and we know that our comments are heard when we make them. SACOG, our region, which includes El Dorado County, is the proud recipient of 7 projects for funding. This is big for us. 2 projects in Yuba County get to advance faster than they otherwise would have been built. And the reason why this matters is every one of us is a pedestrian. Once you get out of your car, you notice right away if that sidewalk's any good or not. If you've ever had little children push around a stroller, you suddenly pay attention to that sidewalk a lot more. Not to mention all the bicycling, and if you've ever found yourself in a wheelchair or crutches, you really notice active transportation projects. And we're looking forward to these being constructed in our region. They connect critical gaps in our network. One project I want to point out in Sacramento connects Midtown Sacramento to Sac State on the east side of Sacramento. The journey right now on a Class 1 trail is 8 miles. This project will cut that in half to 4 miles, cutting 20 minutes of time to anyone who wants to journey between those 2 destinations or beyond. We are now ready to deliver these projects. We're excited to get them going, and our agencies are ready. We're also going to be telling everyone about SB1 and how awesome it is for this particular program and all the others. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Okay, we'll close the hearing. Item 20, Lori.
Item 20 is the adoption of the 2017 Active Transportation Program augmentation for the statewide and small urban and rural components. Commission staff recommends that the Commission adopt the 2017 ATP augmentation statewide and small urban and rural components in accordance with the attached resolution and the staff recommendations. There are a couple revisions that I'd like to note on the small urban and rural component for the Santa Barbara, Las Positas, and Modoc Roads Class 1 construction project. The $500,000 in design should be under right-of-way. On the statewide component, the County of Riverside Cabazon Safe Routes to School project, the Yuba County McGowan Parkway project, and the Santa Barbara Eastside Green Lanes project should have been designated as state-only funds. With those changes noted, staff recommends your approval.
Move it. Second.
Motion by Tavaloni, second by Nunn. We have one speaker, Jared Sanchez.
job they've done on this. I was told our mics were always on. But obviously.
Supposed to be.
Except for yours.
Except for yours.
For yours. What's that tell you, Carl?
There's one more there.
Is this working better?
No?
It's green. It is green, but it's not working. I just want to thank Lori and our team again. The praise we hear from stakeholders from throughout the state is how we feel on this side of the dais as well. You've done a terrific job of bringing people together and selecting projects in a process-driven approach that's going to benefit folks from all of California. Lori, thank you. Terrific job.
I'd certainly like to join in that. Done a great job, and it's not always been easy. I understand that. And my colleague here, we can agree.
As we usually do.
If I could, I just want to add to that. Staff's done an outstanding job, but probably even more important than that is the active transportation program is something that really offers something we hear a lot here from the bicycle community, from social justice issues, and this so much fits into that. And I just think the commission, I just want to praise the commission staff and the commissioners for stepping into this. Could we do more? Sure. If there's more money, absolutely. And I think that's what we always endeavor to want to do. But these are really great first steps and some really outstanding projects.
I don't know if I'm on. Yeah, I'm on. I want to give a shout out to our town hall meeting in Mammoth and Mono County, because I think that if you look at their amazing bike and ped path and the work they've done, and those guys are scrappers, let me tell you, and I think as great as it is to have these additional funds, there's never enough money. And I'd encourage all of you to head up there. They embrace and love tourism, so they'll welcome you with open arms. But I think you kind of look at what a city that basically went through bankruptcy and reduced their staff by 2/3 or something, and they told us of grants they found in amazing places that we hadn't even heard of some of those. So I just want to encourage all of you to look beyond as well and see how you can get more of these projects completed.
Jared, floor is yours.
Thank you. Jared Sanchez with the Cal Bike, and I apologize. I should have submitted my comment card on tab 19, not 20, so I belong with the other speakers and with the commissioners, as well as especially just thanking Lori for her hard work. And Cal Bike fully supports the program, the augmentation projects. There's a large unmet need, as we all know, for safer biking, walking facilities. These additional funds will certainly go a long way, and we look forward to Cycle 4 as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Any further questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 21.
Commissioners, this is an action item to adopt the 2017 Active Transportation Program Augmentation Guidelines Metropolitan Planning Organization Competitive Component for the Tahoe Metropolitan Planning Organization. SB 99 allows the Commission to adopt guidelines proposed by MPOs for administering their MPO competitive component of the ATP. The MPO guidelines must be generally consistent with the state guidelines, but they are allowed discretion in certain areas, such as asking for a supplemental call for projects and project selection criteria and weighting. The Tahoe Metropolitan Planning Organization is new to the ATP MPO component. The Fixing America's Surface Transportation Act designated the Lake Tahoe bi-state MPO as an MPO with an urban area greater than 200,000. This designation means that the Tahoe Metropolitan Planning Organization now receives a share of the MPO competitive component. To administer the Regional 2017 ATP Augmentation Program, the original 9 large MPOs are selecting projects from the applications that were submitted in the 2017 ATP and or conducting a supplemental call for projects based on their Regional 2017 ATP guidelines. Because the Tahoe Metropolitan Planning Organization was not included as a large MPO during the 2017 ATP, they do not have adopted regional guidelines or a group of project applications to select from. Therefore, Tempo is requesting that the Commission adopt the attached Tempo 2017 Augmentation ATP Guidelines. Tempo also has notified commission staff of their intention to conduct a supplemental call for projects. Staff reviewed Tempo's proposed guidelines with respect to the areas for which the commission provided flexibilities and found those areas consistent with the statewide ATP guidelines. None of the other large MPOs are proposing changes to the 2017 ATP augmentation guidelines or their 2017 ATP regional guidelines. Staff recommends your approval of the regional 2017 ATP augmentation guidelines for the Tahoe Metropolitan Planning Organization.
So moved.
Second. Motion by Gilmetti, second by Tavalione. Questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 22, Mitchell.
Commissioners, item 22 is the adoption of the 2018 Local Partnership Program Guidelines. Draft guidelines were presented to the Commission in August. Since then, staff has held 2 workshops to engage stakeholders in the guideline development process. The guidelines presented for adoption today are modeled after the State Local Partnership Program that was authorized by Proposition 1B of 2006. In the book item, staff has indicated a number of the key similarities and differences between the 2 programs. We have reached general agreement, or at least acceptance, on nearly all of the issues. However, the distribution of formulaic funds continues to be a point of disagreement. For the most part, counties with multiple sales tax initiatives prefer the distribution of funds to self-help counties and cities to be based on revenue, while counties with a single sales tax initiative or that generate relatively less revenue prefer a population-based approach. Staff attempted to reach a compromise on this issue, but a solution remained elusive. Therefore, remaining consistent with the 2006 State Local Partnership Program, staff is recommending a distribution to self-help cities and counties that is largely based on population. We will continue to work on this issue as the Commission is committed to revisiting the distribution of program funds with the programming cycle that begins in 2020-21. The guidelines presented in your book item indicate the changes since the draft that was presented in August. One important change to note is the schedule. Staff is proposing to advance adoption of the formulaic program to January from March and adoption of the competitive program to May from June. I would also like to introduce 2 new changes. The first is relative to the incentive program for new and renewed sales tax measures. Staff would propose to expand that to include all new voter-approved taxes, tolls, and fees. The second is relative to savings. Staff proposes 2 changes. The first is to delete the 10% of programming funds remaining on the project at award, and then to instead allow savings to return to the shares in the formulaic program. With that, staff recommends approval of the guidelines.
Move it.
Second.
Motion by Tavalione, second by Lucy Dunn.
Only when you get to comments.
Okay, we'll go through the speakers first, and then we'll have comments.
That
from the
sounds
commission.
great, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Tommy Harris, and then Ray Wolf.
Good afternoon, Chairman Alvarado and Commissioners. Hi, my name is Tony Harris, the Portland City Transportation Consultant. I'm not really here to comment so much on the guideline, but would like to request clarification on the eligible projects. There are opportunities throughout the state to make improvements on parallel facilities and mobility hubs that would benefit capacity and improvements overall. So I'd like to ask if staff could clarify if those type of projects would be considered as eligible for local partnership program.
Yes, those type of improvements are eligible.
Thank you very much.
Ray Wolf and Jared Sanchez.
Good afternoon, Chair Alvarado and Commissioners. First of all, I want to thank Executive Director Susan Branson and Mitchell Weiss for working so diligently. As Mitch pointed out, this has not been an easy conversation, particularly in Southern California. There are some major differences when you compare the local partnership program to the SB1 state and local partnership program. And the most challenging one in my mind is one that we talked about in San Diego, and that is the distribution of the funds. What we're trying to do with SB1 is get money out on the street as quickly as possible. And yet what we're doing here, instead of 95% of the funds being allocated directly through formula, we're taking 50% of that. Now, in the SLPP program, for the 3-year planning cycle that we're looking at in front of you here today, that amounts to $30 million that would have been competitively awarded. Today, what you're looking at, the 50%, is $300 million. What does that mean? That means that my agency and agencies around the state are going to expend significant resources to prepare proposals that then come to CTC staff, who then have to expend resources to go through those proposals and rank them and determine which ones should be eligible. And I would argue that that is a waste of resources when, again, we are trying to get this money out on the street to fix California's transportation infrastructure. And so I would argue that we really need to go back and we need to look carefully at what we're trying to accomplish. I think the SLPP program wasn't broken, and I think we really should look at most of this money going through formula. Thank you. I'll entertain any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jared Sanchez, and then Kenneth Cow.
Again, Jared Sanchez with the California Bicycle Coalition. CalBike values the important, difficult work CTC staff again has done for these guidelines. Being a part of the workshops and I guess seeing the final guidelines before you, there were 2 points of concern that I just wanted to raise real quick on the guidelines. The first one is the major goal of SB1, whether there's several other goals, but the major one, of course, is to focus on rehab and maintenance. Early in the guidelines development process, this was front and center and a leading idea in the competitive pot of funds. As the workshops continued on, somehow, in some way, that was pushed aside. And we've heard, and I know I made this point in the workshops themselves, that there's a $130 million backlog on maintenance and rehab, and the decision to, I guess, to stray away from the rehab and maintenance part and the competitive part still concerns myself and CalBike. The other issue I wanted to bring up was the allowance of increasing highway capacity. Not only is this counter to the congested corridor program, which we'll hear in a bit, but it's also counter to universally accepted fact around induced demand. As far as increasing the supply of highway will increase consumption. This and long-term congestion will continue. This is not just my opinion, but of course academic, professional research shows that simply building or expanding highways and roads will not solve congestion. So I just wanted to point that out in these guidelines, and I think it's an important concern that a lot of us are thinking about. Thank you.
Thank you. Kenneth Cow, then Phil Dow.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Kenneth Cow with MTC again. Again, I wanted to thank you and staff for all your hard work on this. With Mr. Weiss's additions today, I think we are very supportive of the recommendation to allow voter-approved tolls to be eligible for the incentive program, as well as allowing any savings to return to the jurisdiction in the formulaic program. And I also wanted to highlight earlier, in the earlier draft, that STIP funds are now eligible as match. And again, we thank staff for including that. And we would also support staff's recommendation in approving these guidelines. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just can't be used.
Phil Dow, then Cindy Prothro.
Yeah, Phil Dow again from Mendocino Council of Governments. First of all, with what Ray from San Bernardino just said about the distribution of the formula to the competitive, I tend to agree with him. I think we're too far down the road this year and need to keep going at this point. I think that's something we need to consider next time. I was there mainly in this process representing some of the small cities who have self-help type sales taxes. Mendocino Council of Governments sponsored legislation 16, 17 years ago to allow that to happen, and the first ones that are eligible in the state were actually in Mendocino and Lake counties. So I have 3 of them in my jurisdiction. There's also a new one in Lake County and 3 in that I'm aware of in Nevada County. So I was there, as I said, looking for small crumbs, looking for crumbs, but I wanted big crumbs, and some kind of recognition that we did the same thing that all the big agencies did, and it was done only so that we could keep our pavement conditions from totally dropping off the PCI scale. So it was done mainly for rehabilitation type and maintenance type. And so I'm happy with the staff recommendations that because we need a minimum amount to work with. I'm happy with the recommendations that says every agency will get 100,000 flat amount regardless of your population, regardless of what your revenues are. I have one city in my jurisdiction that has tax revenues of, I think, $48,000. So what can you do with that? Nothing. It's poured into maintenance, but they're very happy. I talked to the city manager the other day, and he said, "You mean I can finally repave Port Road?" And I said, "Well, in a couple of years you can." And another agency, just for an example, you may be aware of this city of Willits. I talked to them. You ever heard of that? I talked to them 2 weeks ago and helped them getting their act together as far as getting their deadlines met. And they said, well, and mind you, they're getting $33,000 from their share of the extra gas tax due to this. That's all they get is $33,000. $100,000, they said, wow, we're going to finally put together an actual seal program for our payment, like our plan says we're supposed to be doing, but we never could afford to do it before. So these are the kind of impacts it will have on the small cities. Just want to get that point across. Thank you.
Thank you. Cindy, and then it looks like, I apologize, it looks like Karen Hamilton. Okay, I did this the last time too, didn't I? Floor is yours.
Cindy Prothro, Assistant City Manager for the City of Barstow, and unfortunately, we're not one of the cities that are really going to benefit from SB1. We're going to get in at the maximum, according to the state numbers, $500,000 a year. And in my role, I was a former finance director. Now I'm the Assistant City Manager. I know the sales tax dollars that come through. Extrapolating it, we're going to lose over $20 million a year from our local economy that's just going to be transferred to the state of California for redistribution. And very little of that is going to come back to our community. We have sat in our meetings. Mitch and his staff have done a fine job, but the rules are stacked against a community like ours. A city, we aren't going out for self-help because we're part of San Bernardino and they already have the self-help tax there. The money's not coming back in. In 10 years, you're going to take $250 million out of our city and return $5 million. And the programs that are out there for us to try and compete for as a city of 22,000 people, we're just not in the running for anything. So, you know, when I try and report out to my council, which I had to do Monday night, I told them the impact, and they're just appalled at the loss that it's going to be to our community, because this is going to affect not just the city, but this is taxable dollars that could have been spent elsewhere in our community to support the other businesses that are there. So I probably should have brought this in at the initial item on number 17, but the one item that we were hoping to get some money back in on was what's being brought forward now in this item with the local partnership. So I apologize, and I just wanted to be brief, but let you know that the impact isn't all positive out there.
Thank you.
Can I question for her? Yeah. Explain how you're going to lose money. Could you walk us through, and maybe Mitch, you can,
or get a finance person that can then
because we don't understand how in your line of thinking you're losing money in this process.
Okay. If I look at the sales tax numbers and extrapolate that to gallons of gas, just in diesel alone, and it's a comparable allocation for unleaded, which we sell $50 million or 50 million gallons of diesel tax. those truckers that come through here, our city are now going to have to pay additional money for these new fees. That's discretionary money that they're now not going to be spending on food or whatever in our community. They may just bypass our community. They may fuel up in Nevada. But if you're taking an additional $20 million just in fees on top of what's already being paid in that community, then it's going to the state. That's money that can't be spent elsewhere. You know, if they come in and I'm somebody passing through Barstow. I'm going to Vegas. I spend $20 in gas. Now I have to spend $25 in gas, just as an example. I mean, the numbers aren't going to be accurate there. But that's $5 that could have been spent at a restaurant for food. That's not money that's getting recirculated through the economy. That's money that's coming strictly out of the economy and won't return to it other than through the allocations of the money through SB1, and the allocation that's coming back is $500,000. But when I went through, and our sales tax, one of the biggest sales tax earners in our city is on diesel and unleaded fuels, because we are a crossroads. You know, people come in on the 15, people come in on the 40, they go west to Bakersfield, they go south to San Bernardino or to Los Angeles. The same with, you know, from a trade corridor. We're looking to see if we even benefited from the trade corridor, which we don't.
I get your point.
Okay.
Your theory is that people have a limited budget, and they will make different choices on how to spend their money based upon the increase in
Yes.
the gas tax. Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Any other questions?
That's good, thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Alvarado and members of the Commission. My name is Kevin Hamilton. I am the Executive Director for Central California Asthma Collaborative and a member of the Measure C Advisory Committee in Fresno County, a transportation tax initiative passed by the county residents of Fresno almost 20 years ago with an eye toward expanding both active transportation and good transportation planning and paying our share of the transportation development, which has resulted in a great improvement in our transportation network in our county and left us the envy of several other counties around us, as I'm constantly told. I support the move to approve these guidelines and moving up the dates and to get this funding out more quickly. It means a lot to us. A lot of our money, our RFPs go out in late spring, mid to late spring. Having money move up to be available in January would be really very useful for us in our planning efforts. I do have a problem with the population metric and how it's being utilized. This valley where you're sitting right now is full of rural communities, some of them urban, some of them not, unincorporated communities. There's 4 million people in this valley. I know that doesn't look like a big number compared to, say, Los Angeles with 19 million who are, where they're always telling me, well, we have, you know, half the numbers of the people in the state. It's a lot of geography, and a lot of transportation passes through here on their way to other places, leaving behind virtually nothing, and in fact, very seldom even spending the money that I would have to spend as I do when I pass through Barstow, because I'm not going to face 2 or 3 hours of desert without a full tank of gas and whatever else I happen to need. So we really would like you to address some kind of compensatory mechanism for making an adjustment based on the vehicle traffic passing through these communities, both on a daily basis for purposes of work and as part of the goods movement system or the recreation system. I know it's late days for this kind of thing. I do want to thank you for including STIP funds in the matching eligibility. That will make a big difference for us as well. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Carl, you had a comment?
No, sir, just leaning forward.
Okay. Any further questions? Do we have a motion? We do have a motion on the floor. Okay, any further questions?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I thought you meant to that speaker.
Oh.
Overall, we're done with comments from the audience. Yes, thank you. Again, our team has done just an amazing job, and the stakeholders have pulled together as best we can to try to resolve challenges that we face. And where you, the mic doesn't work, sorry, it doesn't seem to work.
Okay.
Is it working okay? Okay, good, thank you. The challenge, again, is where you stand is based on where you sit. And we have some self-help counties that have not only taxed themselves, but taxed themselves numerous times with those still going on. My colleague to my right, Yvonne, obviously represents a county that has done that. I happen to reside in a county that's done that, and several others in the Bay Area have done that. In the county I live in, it now totals 1 5/8 cent current sales tax imposed by our taxpayers on themselves that are still in operation. The solution today for the next 2 years of going solely by population rather than a mix of population and contribution, I just want to be on the record, is for the next 2 years. It is not a balanced approach, but it's an approach on which we can move forward collectively today. But for those taxpayers in California who are paying considerably more to improve their transportation systems, as we look at this again in 2 years, I just want to be on the record as saying thank you to the citizens in those communities, as well as thank you to those who have one tax going on right now as well. But let's continue to discuss this as we start delivery as soon as possible during these first 2 years.
Thank you. One of the things that when we were doing SB1 was not to recreate the wheel. One of the things that the objective is to make sure the money got out in a streamlined fashion and used as efficiently as possible. As Mr. Gardino has mentioned, I'm a member of a county that has been multiple times gone out and to the voters and had approved. This time it was disproved. I have a county that I represent that's been turned down by the voters 4 times. So what I'm looking at is I'll be following this up into the next legislative session, and if I don't like what's going on or we can work on a solution, I won't wait 2 years. We'll introduce legislation in a year, and we'll put it in statute how it will be crafted and with all input from stakeholders like this process. But my impression when I was doing this was not that we were going to create more bureaucracy to be able to manage this money, but that we were going to be able to just stay status quo. So with that being said, I'm looking forward to making sure that it's equitable right now, but if it doesn't become equitable, then we'll just introduce legislation to make it equitable. Thank you.
Further questions? Good. Any, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item 23.
Hello, Commissioners. This item relates to the 2017 Local Streets and Roads Annual Reporting Guidelines that you all adopted in August. We moved very quickly on those because we wanted to work very quickly to make sure that the Commission's role in the local streets and roads funding as part of SB1 did not slow down the ability for that money to go out. And then in September, the legislature passed and the governor signed a budget trailer bill, AB 135, that changed some of the statutes related to this program. And therefore, we need to amend those guidelines. And so staff is here to ask that you amend these guidelines. This is an action item. The changes are relatively minor. I would say that the most relevant change is for this year is the fact that instead of in the original bill, a city or county having to amend or adopt in their budget the list of projects for SB1 funds, they can now bring to their city or county, city council or county board of supervisors, a resolution with the list of SB1 projects. And this is presumably to make it easier for them to be able to get us the project list that we need and meet statutory requirements on the reporting of how the money will be spent in an easier way than having to go back and amend their full budget. So with that, if you have other questions, I'm happy to go into more depth of the changes, but primarily, these are pretty minor changes. Our goal, our intention, Commission staff intention, is to just make this process as easy as we can in this first year, knowing that this is new for all cities and counties to do in this way, to report to the Commission, and new to us to administer this. And we, again, do not want to be an impediment to the ability for SB1 dollars to start flowing to these, very critically needed maintenance of these local streets and roads.
Move approval.
Motion by Modafer, second by Burke. Questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. I thought that keeping the commissioners dancing in their chairs would move this along faster, but I'm facing a revolt. So we're going to take a 10-minute break, be back here at 20 minutes to 4. And
Want to pay the dry cleaning?
however long it takes, we're going to finish the agenda today.